Hello, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We have gotten used to shouting out some new places at the beginning of our episodes, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to talk about what some people on YouTube may be seeing. But first, let's welcome into our top ratings people from Malaysia, which, by the way, you are number 2 in the past 7 days, which means we usually are number 1 in the United States, which makes sense because we're in the United States and we speak English from the United States. But usually number 2 is Canada. Knocked them right out of that number 2 spot,
Nice.
Malaysia. So thank you.
You go,
And
Malaysia.
in the United States, we also are really happy to welcome in another number 2 spot, people in New Mexico. So we're glad that you are listening to us. If you're watching on YouTube, you may notice that we look a little different. Our format's a little different. We are kind of experimenting with a new look. So I want to invite everyone to go over to YouTube and take a peek, especially because we are putting up a QR code on YouTube where if you take the camera on your smartphone to that QR code, it's going to ask you to open up a website and you will have the links to things like our podcast website, Patreon, our Facebook page, my website. You'll have all these links that you can just click on your smartphone. So I want to encourage you to go over to YouTube, take a peek, see what we've done with titles and stuff, and check out the QR code because you might find that really handy instead of trying to remember what we said and how to find us out there in the internet world. But we're going to start today's topic now, regardless of the format on YouTube and the fact that people may now be pausing us and waiting till they can get on YouTube. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to just forge forward with the topic of interests and inventories. Alison and I were talking about observation and assessment, and I was telling her about an assignment that my college students do of picking a less common way to record things about children. So the assignment is basically take a look in this chapter in a textbook, take a look at these articles, pick 2 of your favorite ways to record data about children that are not anecdotal records or running records, which is what most people talk about when we talk about collecting data about children. They talk about taking notes of some kind. So other than that, what can you do? Many of my students pick out the ones we're featuring on this episode of the podcast, and we're going to talk about others you may not have heard about or realized what the differences are between them on Patreon. Yeah. Here on the podcast, going out to everybody, we're focusing on interest inventories and child interviews. Yeah. Okay. So Alison, you have it in front of you. Do you want to let everybody know what the interest inventory is?
Oh, wait, hold on. You put me on the spot. Okay.
Sorry. I know.
Because it's on the phone and it closes out, All right.
Yeah.
Interest inventories can be used to gain information from children and families about what children like and dislike. It helps in planning and selecting activities and materials. And it's typically done in checklist or questionnaire form through sign up sheets for activities.
So my experience is most places have a questionnaire that go to the families, especially upon enrollment or the beginning of a year. And again, my experience is they ask some questions like, how does your child indicate that they need a bathroom? What are the words your child uses for this? Sort of nuts and bolts things about the child's routine. How often does your child nap? Does your child have any foods? It's usually about foods that your child does not like, right?
Yeah.
Usually that sort of thing. Any foods your child's allergic to, doesn't like. And then there'll be some sort of general question. Anything else you want to tell us about your child? But people don't know what to put there.
Yeah.
These sorts of interest inventories can really help you to connect with the children. I think when you ask more specific questions than most of our forms ask. For example, you might ask the families, do you take your child to a playground? Do they play in a yard by your home? Do you, depending where your program is located,
Yep.
um, has your child ever been to the movie theater? Does your child have favorite videos? Can you think of other ones, Allison?
I always would love to know, like, do they attend any other group activities? Because that I think is always helpful, and it could be like a play group or your church or synagogue group or something like that. But like, are they involved in some other type of group setting? You know,
You know,
or I also would
don't,
love to know about talents like dance and singing, and
yeah.
do they play an instrument? You know,
We sort of incidentally find those things out. Someone's picking the
yes,
child up, and you hear them say to the child, "Hurry up, we have to get to dance today." But we
yeah,
don't necessarily ask that question from the outset and say, "Does your child take other lessons? Does your
yeah,
child spend time in any other play groups? What sort of toys does your child prefer to play with?"
yep,
You know, just I think it's like more detailed questions so that I can say to the child, "Oh, I heard you really enjoy doing this activity with your family." Saying to the family, "Have you had the opportunity to take your children sightseeing anywhere local or further away? What did
yeah,
they enjoy?"
yeah,
Right? It doesn't
yeah,
have to be an expensive trip. It could be anywhere. What are some of the things your child sees locally that your child
yeah,
really enjoys going to or seeing?
yeah. I also think it's helpful to know, have they ever traveled either close by or overseas, or have they been on an airplane? What types of vacations do you take, if you take any at all? Have you ever taken a day trip? What do you like to do as a family? Like these kind of things, because I feel like any information I can get helps me form relationships and communication with that child. So like, if they're upset, like, hey, I heard that you went to, I don't know, the state fair the other day. Like those kind of things I think are, and then they get talking on that, and those are the things I
Right.
want to know. And it kind of just gives you a glimpse into like who they are as a person. We're all different, and they all like different things, and we all dislike different things, and that's okay.
I also think as a parent, I'd be reading these questions, saying to my husband, "We need to take some more day trips with these children. They're asking me about day trips."
Day trips.
I
I
think
don't
it
want to
can
put nothing
inspire
down.
people. Don't you think it can inspire
Yeah.
people to do things though, right? Like
Yeah.
I would be looking to
Yeah.
go, if you say on the questionnaire, if you even say something like, "What are your child's top 3 favorite books?"
Yes. That might get your
Not
reading to figure out.
I
Right? Like, I
would
don't
be
know what
like,
their top three
"Oh,
is. Let me go read for.
let me go ask my child which books they prefer."
They
Like,
like. Yes.
right? Sometimes I think even better than just what's your child's favorite book is what's the top 3? Because I think for the top 3, I'd have to go ask my child. I think I could name
Yeah.
when they were young, I could name their favorite book
Their favorite
because it's
ones.
the
But
one
the
we read
top
over and
three.
over. But the top
Yeah.
3, what does your child watch television? What are your child's 3 favorite things to watch?
Yeah.
It would be so interesting if people put down things like my child just loves to watch YouTube videos. You find out who are the YouTube children.
Yeah.
Who tends to watch that sort of length of video and what are they? And it
Right.
informs me as an adult. What are the young people watching on there? I would want to know. What are
Yes.
these young children
What
watching
are
on
you
YouTube that they're
watching?
so
Yeah.
enamored with? If the families are willing to tell me. Now, they don't have to tell me any of this, but I think to
Right.
ask these detailed questions does help us to have better conversations with children and inspire probably people like me who would have looked at my husband and said, "We got to do more day trips with these children."
Yeah.
Right? Because they ask about it.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which I thought was really interesting, was the child interviews. So the last one, we're sending that home to families. Maybe they're talking to their children about it. You can encourage them to talk to their children about the questions on the interest inventory. Absolutely. Tell them, ask your
Yeah.
child if you don't know or if you're unsure. Feel free to talk to your child about these questions. But then, as the professionals, we also want to interview the children. And I thought this was so interesting because how often do we sit and do that? So, Allison, you want to do the description of that one too, since you might or might not have it up on your phone, but I
I
know
have
I
it this
don't.
time. I
Okay.
I have it this time. All right. Child interviews are conducted anytime firsthand information about children's needs, problems, interests, or reasoning, would be helpful for assessment, conflict resolution, behavior management, or planning. And then you could use audio or videotape, or just have a written transcription of the interview.
This has to do some with behavior then,
Mm-hmm.
right? It has to do with talking to them
Yeah.
about behavior
It's
and
like
behavioral choices.
conflict resolution. Um, wait, let me see what the other thing said.
And
It
they're
said,
saying, talk to the child about conflict resolution, get their ideas, either videotape it, audio tape it, or take a
or just
transcript, write
take
down
a
what they're saying.
transcript. Yes. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
easier to audio or video if you are permitted to do that.
If you're, yeah. Yeah.
And it's called an interview. So we would say to the child, what do you think? What do you think would work here? And we have these conversations with children all the time when behavior
We do.
happens, right?
Yeah, we
We
do.
bring them
I just
over, we
don't think
say,
we
what could
consider
you
it an
do
interview.
instead?
Yeah.
Right? I know that you're upset. Things could be frustrating. What could we do instead when we're frustrated? But I don't know that we record it.
No.
That would be
Because
super interesting to record that.
I never even thought to record it, honestly, like until Cindy said this about a half hour ago. I was like, oh, like recording it. Because I think I kind of interviewed a child today, and I don't think I really considered it an interview. For me, it was just, I want to figure out what's going on here. Like I have a boy, I've spoken about him before, where he's very quiet, but he started to get very upset. So I actually pulled him aside. I was like, hey, let's figure out what is bothering you. What is it about this particular time of day that seems to be upsetting you? And he actually answered me, because we were just one-on-one. And I was like, oh, I wish I recorded it though, because I think it would have given insight to other people who work with him, to his parents, to, I think it would have been helpful. But I never even thought of it as that way. For me, it was just like, let me figure out if I can help him. So I think taking it to another step of like either recording it through audio or video could be very, very helpful, especially if maybe one day you need to refer him for services, to refer, like you're like, oh, look, here's some interviews that I've done with him to give you some insight. I think it could be very, very helpful. I think you could also, like, some of these fun interviews, like if they're just fun, or like you're just trying to figure out certain things, like I think it'd be fun to interview the children like a newscaster almost, just
That would be fun.
and videotape it and give it to the parents at like conferences, or show them during like an event at school. I think it would just be fun,
That
and I
would
think you
be
get
fun to
different
just
answers. Yeah.
It would be like one of those TV shows where they feature children, right? Where they're like,
Yes.
children say the darndest things, like
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yes.
But it also, while you're doing it and you're having fun with it, it captures their use of language, their
Yes.
vocabulary, their reasoning skills, their cognitive skills.
Yes.
It
Yep.
captures a lot of skills that children are building. And it doesn't only have to be about behavior. They talk about behavior in the description that you gave and conflict resolution because they want you to record the child's thinking process. That's why.
Yes.
Because they
Yeah.
want you to record what is the cognition, the thinking that's happening about this problem. One of the goals for early childhood education is to teach children problem solving skills. That's why you record that. How are we doing on our
Yeah.
problem solving skills? Plus the use of vocabulary and the ability to express your feelings, right?
Yeah.
Everything we do has to go back to the goals. And these are the social, emotional, and language goals and cognitive
Yeah.
goals for young children.
Yeah.
But it also can be, we just record almost like an interview with them. Like you're saying, Alison, just record
That'd
that,
be fun.
find out
Yeah.
firsthand their likes and dislikes, find out what they're thinking firsthand and have a recording. I would imagine you have to get permission. I would imagine that you have to send somebody home saying, we occasionally audio or video record the children to capture their language skills, their critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
their cognition, their use of language, right? This is why we do it. You have to explain to families we do it to have a record other than what the adults have written. We want a firsthand recording of your children. If you're ever interested in seeing those recordings, let us know. It's their children.
Yeah. Because I think like written transcriptions are good if you have no other option, or if you're strapped for time, say. But there's something about seeing it and hearing it in the child's voice that makes either a bigger impact, or when you go back to do your assessments and your evaluations and you want to put in documentation, you could be like, oh wait, I don't quite remember what she said, so oh, here
Mm-hmm.
it is, oh, and she used this kind of language and she spoke very clearly, or whatever it might be. It makes it easier rather than always going on your memory, because we got a lot going on and you might forget.
And it's in some ways more objective than me taking notes because I'm getting
Yes.
everything the child said. There are
Yes.
assessment tools that some places use where you can just upload that video or audio recording and have
Mm-hmm.
it as part of your running record of what's
Yeah.
happening with the
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Um, I think it would be interesting to see that problem solving process, but also interesting to just sit and talk to the child and record it in that way and include it in your data. Purposefully interviewing individual children. I would set up times to sit one on one with children once they feel a little comfortable after the beginning of the school year. They're comfortable with you now.
Yeah.
So you might have the interest inventory that we talked about in the beginning of this episode go home to the families in the beginning of a school year or when they enroll. And then maybe a couple months later, we start to do these interviews with the children once they're so comfortable with us and in the classroom that they're more likely to tell us more and use more language.
And I think it would be interesting to take some of those things that you ask the families in the interview inventory one, and ask the same questions to the child and see if you get the same answer. you know?
I can just imagine me writing down like my child's favorite TV shows, and then they interview my child, and he says something completely different.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could definitely, or even when you
Yeah.
say, have you gone interesting places? And I'll write a whole story about having gone somewhere with my children, but then they'll tell a story about somewhere else that mattered to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of gives you insight into the child's mind of what they find interesting versus what the family thinks they find interesting, which is, there's nothing wrong with either answer, but it just gives you what they're thinking. And maybe the family thought they liked it, but the child's like, yeah, no, that really wasn't that interesting. I don't really,
Maybe
like,
not so much. Maybe
yeah.
not so much. You don't,
Yeah.
we don't really know until we ask the children. It'd be interesting, even as an adult, to like say something to my mother, like, what, Mom, do you know what my favorite whatever is? And see if she could come up with it if I think it's something she should know. And I'll bet you not, because no
Tell
one
you,
else
my
can
mother
crawl
would not
inside
know.
you and know, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll bet you
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. And also,
Um,
like, they're seeing it from a different vantage point than you are. Like, they're seeing, like, maybe you went to an event and they very much enjoyed it, and I smiled and laughed during the event too.
yeah.
Still might not be my favorite event. I might have been faking all of that. I might have been like, yeah, it was enjoyable, but it's not my favorite. Whereas other people see you differently,
Hmm.
and it's good to get like the first hand account from the child. But also I think it's good to get that vantage point from the family too, like what they value as important might be different than what a 3 or 4 year old does. So it's just
I
interesting.
distinctly remember having conversations with children sometimes, and I don't remember every little detail, but I remember having conversations with children when I was a classroom teacher where the family told me about something amazing that happened, and I would go to the child and say, I heard about this, and the child was like, whatever. I don't.
Yeah.
The child was like, yeah, I'm whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not so interested
I'm
in
not so
talking about
interested in
that.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
funny.
I think you're right, Alison. I think people take some of the same questions that were on the
Yes.
interview. I mean, on the interest
On the
inventory, the
inventory.
paper
Yeah.
that's sent home to the families, and now interview the children with the same questions. I
Hmm.
think that would be
I think it
amazing.
would be amazing.
Yeah. And like, the more that we can sit with them one to one and have these conversations, the more we develop relationships with them and connect with them.
Yeah.
So it's all for a good purpose.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Right. I hope that we got you all thinking about the questions that are on the questionnaires to families, what else you might want to ask, and be very careful when you ask. There are some people who struggle more to do things with their children than others. We want to ask in a very respectful way. We want to say, have you ever, does your child ever, or, have you had the opportunity to, do something?
Yeah.
If not, what else would you like to share with us about activities with your children? Make it very open-ended that way. Have you had the opportunity to take your children to a playground? If so, how often? If not, where do you enjoy playing with the children?
Yeah.
Something like that. Give them the if yes, this, if not, this.
No, this. Yeah.
Right. If you're going to ask anything about have you traveled, have you had the opportunity to travel with your children? If not, where's a place you think your child would like to go?
Yeah.
That sort of open-ended question. Be very careful. And then take some of the answers and interview the children, but also interview them about when behavioral things happen to get that problem solving, and record it. So you would record it audio, you would record video. That's what I recommend. If you don't have the technology, you would write a transcript. If you do have the technology, I hope you're allowed to use it.
Yeah.
Why have technology if we can't use it for these good reasons?
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
We will catch you next time on the podcast, Preschool Peeps. Don't forget to go over to YouTube and check out that QR code, which again, you just hold your smartphone camera up to it and it will tell you to press something to go somewhere, and it'll take you
to press something. And that was my first QR code, guys, and I did it. So if I can do it, so can you. Because I am not technologically advanced at all.
I proudly am consistently now teaching people how to use QR codes, because so much of what I do for professional development includes a QR code of some kind to get into participation software. So I'm proud to inform the people how to use a QR code.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I practiced myself before. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I see them everywhere, but I just never even bother to use them.
Now you're going to be scanning every QR code that you come across to see what it takes you to.
I know. Now I'm going to be like, what have I been missing?
Yes, exactly.
I've been missing a lot.
Okay, preschool peeps, enjoy. And we will be talking more about what we can do with recording data on bonus content on Patreon this month.
Yeah.
Catch you next time.
Bye, peeps.